My fiancé tried to redecorate my house and threw out my childhood memories without telling me. So I called off the wedding and left her stunned. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I've lived in the same house most of my life. Not because I'm stuck or anything, far from it. This house was my parents' first, the one I grew up in, and after they passed, it came to me. It's filled with everything that mattered to them and everything that matters to me. Some people might call it cluttered, but to me, it's just real. Every corner of this place is a part of my story. Dad's baseball cap from his college days, Mom's collection of recipe cards with her handwriting all over them, my grandfather's old records and war medals. I've never been the guy who can just let that stuff go. When I met my fiancée, I thought she got that. We'd been together about 2 years, and after 6 months of being engaged, I was sure she was the one. She was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, confident, funny, the kind of person who could make friends in an empty room. And she had this strong, charismatic energy that was hard not to fall for. But I started noticing this little edge to her, this streak of needing to control things, to have everything exactly her way. Sometimes it was just little stuff, like wanting to order for me at a restaurant or deciding how we'd spend our weekends. I brushed it off as quirky at first. I mean, every couple has its compromises, right? But the comments about the house started early. Your place could use some updating, she'd say, looking around like she was seeing a mess where I saw my life. A few modern touches wouldn't hurt. I'd laugh it off, tell her I liked it the way it was, that it felt like home. She'd drop it, but not without giving me that look. You know the one. Like she thought I was ridiculous, but was too polite to say it. The comments kept coming, though. We're going to need more space if we have kids. Don't you think we should clear out some of this stuff? She'd ask, her voice getting that slightly clipped edge. You don't really need all these old things, do you? At first, I'd just shake my head, maybe make a joke, but it started to bug me. I explained, more than once, what these things meant to me, that they weren't just objects but pieces of my family, my history. And every time, she'd listen, nod, and I'd think maybe, just maybe, she was finally getting it. Then came the weekend. She told me she had a surprise. Said she'd planned it so I could get away, clear my head with all the wedding planning. It sounded thoughtful. So I took the hint, left the house, and spent a couple of days visiting my brother, who lives a few hours away. When I got back, I opened the door and almost didn't recognize the place. My house, the one I grew up in, the one I'd carefully preserved for years, looked like it had been stripped and replaced by something out of a catalog. Cold, colorless, empty. Everything was clean, sterile, lifeless. The photos of my family that used to hang on the wall, replaced with generic landscapes in bland frames. The books that filled my dad's old bookshelf? Gone. The rug my mom bought at some market years ago, frayed at the edges but rich with memories of us sitting on it, talking, laughing? Gone. In its place, some thin, modern-looking rug that had all the warmth of a hotel lobby. I stood there, stunned, my heart pounding, trying to understand what I was looking at. I couldn't believe she would just throw away my life like that. I ran from room to room, hoping maybe she'd tuck some things away, that there was still some trace of what my home used to be. But it was all gone. Everything I had left of my parents, everything that made this place my home, erased. She was waiting for me in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with a satisfied smile on her face. Like she'd done me this huge favor. What do you think? She asked, clearly expecting me to be grateful. What the hell did you do to my house? I finally managed, my voice trembling. Oh, come on, she laughed, brushing it off. I just made a few improvements. Freshened things up. Don't tell me you liked all that old stuff. That old stuff was my family's things. I shot back, my voice rising. Where is it? Where's all my stuff? She rolled her eyes, like I was being the unreasonable one. I donated a lot of it, tossed some things that were too worn out. You really don't need to hold on to all that. We're building a future together, and that starts with a clean slate. I felt like I'd been hit with a wrecking ball. You threw out my family's things, without even asking me? God, don't be so dramatic, she replied, waving a hand as if this was just a minor inconvenience. It was all clutter, and I was doing you a favor. Honestly, you should thank me. The sheer nerve of it left me speechless. I stared at her, trying to understand how someone who claimed to love me could be so careless, so completely disconnected from who I was. All I could manage was, get out. Her face shifted from smugness to shock. Wait, you're breaking up with me? Over some junk. You're really going to throw away our future for a bunch of stuff? Yeah, I said, my voice calm but final. Because you've shown me you don't care about me, not really. You only care about the version of me you can control. The version you're trying to turn me into. She went ballistic. She shouted at me, calling me ungrateful, accusing me of ruining our future over sentimental nonsense. She threw every manipulation she could think of at me, trying to make me feel like I was the crazy one for not appreciating her help. But it didn't matter. I'd already made up my mind. After she left, I walked through the house numb, taking in what was left of it. It was like she'd stripped away everything that made it mine. I went to bed that night feeling like a stranger in my own home. The next day, I found myself at thrift stores, markets, anywhere I could go to find some replacement for what I'd lost. I knew it wouldn't be the same, but I had to try. Days later, she reached out, sent a long, rambling email saying she was sorry, that she hadn't realized how much those things meant to me. But I knew it was just another manipulation. Her words were hollow. She didn't mention anything about understanding or respecting my feelings, only about compromising so we could move forward together. Then, just when I thought I'd seen it all, she tried to dangle some of my things as a bargaining chip. Claimed she'd kept a few items for safekeeping and would return them if I'd agree to sit down and talk things over. I knew it was a lie. She had no idea what she'd thrown away, no clue about the things she'd destroyed. But here she was, trying to use whatever little hope I had left to get me back under her thumb. I didn't reply to her. There was nothing left to say. And after a few days, she upped the game, showed up at my house. With her parents in tow, thinking they could talk some sense into me. Her mom tried the nice approach, all sugar-sweet smiles, telling me how much her daughter just wants what's best for us. Her dad took the hard line, talking about how much money had been spent on the wedding, how disrespectful it was of me to end things over something so minor. I stood there, letting them talk, barely holding back my anger. When they finished, I looked them in the eyes and said, I'm not marrying someone who doesn't respect me or what matters to me. Money doesn't matter. Respect does. They tried to argue, but I walked them to the door and shut it behind them. I could still hear her dad ranting as they walked down the driveway, about how ungrateful and stubborn I was, about how I'd regret it. But I felt nothing but relief. The house was quiet after that. Empty, but in a way that finally felt peaceful. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding, replacing, one piece at a time. It wasn't the same as before. How could it be? But I started to realize that my memories, my family, weren't in the things she'd taken. They were in me. And I was still here. I started filling the space again, not with replicas of what I'd lost, but with new things that felt like me. I visited flea markets and antique stores, places that had that same feel of history, of lives lived. I found new things that fit with my memories, rather than replace them. And over time, the house started to feel like home again. And that's when I understood the real lesson in all of this. She hadn't just stripped away things. She'd forced me to confront what really mattered. I'd almost sacrificed my identity for someone who didn't see me for who I was. But now, I knew I'd never make that mistake again. In the end, she'd shown me exactly who she was, and given me the chance to find my way back to who I really was. It took months, maybe even a full year, but the house gradually became something else, something new yet still rooted in all those memories and pieces of my past. I rebuilt piece by piece, not by replacing what was lost, but by creating something that honored the people I loved while also reflecting who I was now. My best friend stuck around to help. On weekends, he'd drop by with some dusty old record he'd found at a thrift store, or an odd piece of furniture he thought would fit the place. We'd spend hours just arranging things, laughing about our high school days, about the crazy mess my life had turned into and how much better it felt now. You dodged a bullet, man, he'd say with a shake of his head. People like that, they'll never be happy until they control everything in sight. And I knew he was right. As I looked around, I realized that my ex had never been interested in sharing a life with me. She'd wanted to create her own version of one, and I was supposed to just go along with it. Losing those pieces of my past had been painful, but it had forced me to see the truth before it was too late. She was someone who didn't understand that the things I cherished were not just objects, but symbols of who I was and where I'd come from. One day, a year or so after everything had settled, I ran into her by chance. It was at a local coffee shop, a place I'd been going to since high school, and there she was, sitting at a table with a guy who looked just like the type she'd pick. Clean-cut, polished, wearing clothes that screamed professional. She noticed me before I could slip away and gave me a look, one that was part pity, part arrogance. She didn't even acknowledge what had happened between us, just flashed that same calculating smile. "Still living in that old house?" she asked, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "Yeah," I replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I am. And it's more like home now than it ever was before." Her smirk faded, and for a split second, I thought I saw something else, maybe a flicker of regret, or maybe just frustration that I wasn't the wreck she'd hoped I'd become. Whatever it was gone in an instant, replaced by that practiced, perfect expression she wore like a mask. She turned back to her date, dismissed me with a flick of her hair, and I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than I had in years. That moment was the last piece of closure I needed. I knew she hadn't changed, and that was fine by me. She'd continue on her path, just as I'd continue on mine. For a while, I felt angry, cheated even, about losing pieces of my family that I could never replace. But over time, I came to see those losses differently. They were painful, yes, but they'd also cleared the way for something better, something true. In losing those physical things, I'd found something I never would have if I'd stayed with her. Clarity, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. Now, when I look around my house, I see it as a testament to resilience, to love, to everything my parents taught me. It may not look like the home I grew up in, but it's mine in every sense of the word. And I know deep down that this place holds more than just memories. It holds the foundation of the life I'm building. One where I'll never have to sacrifice my own story for someone else's vision. In the end, she was right about one thing. I didn't need to hold on to my past in the way I thought I did. But the irony? I didn't need her to show me that. All I needed was a little push to find out that I could rebuild, that I could honor my past while living in the present. And now, whenever I hear from friends who see her around, caught up in her endless quest for perfection, I just feel grateful. I dodged a life of compromises that would have left me as nothing more than a shadow of myself. And as I sit in the home I've created, one that's rich with both memory and possibility, I know I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not even for the version of love she had once promised, because looking back, I can see now that it wasn't love at all, just control wrapped up in a pretty bow. So I guess that's it. Life moves on. The memories I've lost, they live on in me. The home I've made, it's all mine. And the woman I almost married, she's just a chapter in a story I've long since closed.